everyone. Welcome to the Safe House, brought to you by the Safe House Initiative. I'm Jeff Edwards, co-chair of the Safe House Initiative, and your host for today's podcast. Every once in a while, you get very fortunate to come across an individual who really can shed light like no other person can. And today, our guest is Wade Baker, the co-founder of the Scientia Institute. And I tell you, I've been excited about meeting Wade for a long time. So, hey, Wade, welcome to the Safe House.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it. And wow, I like to be associated with shedding light. So that's a lot to live up to, but definitely something I aspire to do.
Why don't you introduce yourself to our audience? Because I'm sure they're dying to know about how you got to where you are today.
All right. Sounds good. Yeah. So Wade Baker, I'll start sort of present and then maybe we work back. But currently, as Jeff said, I am one of the co-founders of the Scientia Institute. We're a data science and research firm focusing on cybersecurity issues. I'm sure we'll talk about some of that research as we go. But our specialty is, we're not a market research firm like a Gartner or a Forrester. We don't tend to do a lot of survey research like you see in the space a lot. We really love taking large, nasty, complex security data sets and seeing what we can learn from them, and then sharing those findings with the security community. So hopefully we shed some light on difficult problems and help them do things better. So that's kind of what we're about. And I'm also, at the same time, a professor in the Pamplin School of Business at Virginia Tech. So I teach some management of cybersecurity courses there, mainly to their Masters of IT students and their MBA students. So it's kind of nice to, I've always had one foot in academia and one foot out. And maybe that's not the best for balance sometimes, but I really like it. It's been fun over the course of my career.
Well, you got a strong core, obviously, so good balance. So did you envision yourself in this role when you were a 20-year-old Wade Baker?
No, I envisioned myself as a professional baseball player because I went to college on a baseball scholarship, and that's what was forefront on my mind. I was always kind of a nerd, like my dad bought me computers and parts and things, and I like to take them apart and tinker with them, and that kind of got my. But I always viewed it as a hobby, not a career. But then pretty soon realized that I wasn't fast enough and didn't have a good enough arm and couldn't field well enough to be a professional baseball player. I could hit, but that doesn't usually get you to the next level. And kind of had to figure out what to do with my life. So I did end up falling back on computers, and it was. But it was still my first job was as a system administrator, network administrator in a university, going back to the straddling academia and professional. And then I started teaching courses like continuing education courses for like your Microsoft certifications and your CCNA, CCNP kind of stuff. Cisco certified networking professional. Sorry for the acronym. And enjoyed doing that, but don't really make any money as an instructor, at least not back then. So I went back to school to get my PhD, and it was in what sounded like kind of an IT-ish type program, business information technology, at Virginia Tech. And at that time I thought I'd like to be a professor. I like this university thing, so maybe that'll up the salary a bit, and that'll be cool. But I still never, I didn't see myself doing what I do now. But that started to change. So my first semester when I was a PhD student, I really wanted to do something. I found out that this program that I was in was not really an IT like you and I would think of IT. They were IT, like information and decision sciences. So applying data and quantitative modeling to business decision making and problem solving. And I had an interest in cybersecurity at this point. I started thinking, well, how in the world am I going to do a dissertation and get out of this program? And I've got to figure out how to blend these two worlds of data analysis, decision sciences, and security. And that definitely I can draw a path from there to where I am now.
Yeah.
Everything else since that point in time when I realized I needed to do that to where I am now has been kind of a series of chance happenings and open doors and those kinds of things, which has been good.
What is the origin or the genesis of the modern day Scientia Institute? What was the path to get there? Just curious.
Yeah, yeah. So let me back. I hope it's an origin story. So hopefully it's not too long of an explanation in some of this. But I want to go back to that first semester in PhD program. I knew I needed data. I
Yeah.
wanted to do a dissertation on security risk modeling and management to improve security decision making, and I saw that as a big gap. This by the way would have been I started that PhD in 2003. So just to
Okay.
give you a sense of when this is, right? A little over
Okay.
20 years ago.
Yeah.
And security industry back then was pretty different.
Yeah.
Kind of very, very early. I know it's not early days, like you go back to the 60s it's been going on for a long time. But as far as quote cybersecurity, like we think of it today, I think
Mm-hmm.
that was early days. So anyway, I knew I needed data, didn't have any data, and didn't know where to get data. And I don't there weren't many publicly accessible data resources out there on various things about security you'd need to know in order to assess risk and do the kinds of things that I wanted to do. So I
Huh.
sent out several dozen emails just asking security companies, "Hey, do you have data like this? And here's what I'd
Hmm.
like to do. Maybe I could work for you over the summer part time and help you collect this data, and then we'll see how it goes." And one person responded, Dr. Peter Tippett of a company called TrueSecure at that time. Great guy. I owe a lot of my career to him actually, and answering that email from a desperate grad student. But I started working with this company TrueSecure, and they had some data, and so I started gathering up every scrap of data I could. TrueSecure eventually in 2004, 2005 merged with Betrusted and Ubers and a couple other security companies around the world and formed CyberTrust. And then CyberTrust was doing incident response investigations after a security incident. And that was I found fascinating because for the first time I could participate in a security incident, see what happened,
Mm-hmm.
sort of dig through all the evidence and recreate this is how this happened. And then I basically asked permission. I said, I think we've got something here. Would it be possible if I did this for every single investigation we've ever done and we will do going forward? And that's, I collect a series of data points about that incident and piece this all together, and we'll study it big picture, and we'll have trends and patterns and things like that and see what we learn. And it was, I was given permission. And so we did that. Just fascinating lessons started emerging from
Yeah.
this. And about that time, CyberTrust was acquired by Verizon. And maybe within 6 months or a year, we published the very first Verizon data breach investigations report from the analysis of all of that information. And that report really set my career on a different trajectory because it was the first time the industry had really seen what forensic level analysis publicly available. I think it happened in government circles and behind
Yeah.
closed doors and that kind of thing. But public, here's several hundred incidents and how they occurred and what went wrong and all of these kinds of things. And that report became very well received and kind of became my job for the next 8 years, is collecting that data, doing that analysis, working with law enforcement agencies around the world to get similar
Yeah.
data sets and
Yeah.
really expand that and publish that report, which is still going today, which is awesome.
Yeah. 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 It's the gold standard at one point.
Yeah, and back then there weren't a lot of reports. I remember
Yeah.
seeing the Microsoft Security Intelligence report, I think published before the Verizon data breach, and then Symantec. They used to publish kind of an annual report, and that was it. I mean, now everybody has annual threat report, but then it was new, and for me, it was a way, going back to the shedding of light. I imagine the world of what what does a data breach really look like?
Yeah.
Shrouded in darkness. Everybody has their guesses and their gut instincts and their assumptions. And that's not a very good way to manage risk when there's a huge amount of uncertainty. So I viewed, and the team that joined me in that very much viewed our mission as shining a light, driving away the clouds of uncertainty, and letting people see what happened, with the hope of improving the ability to manage risk and do something about it.
So it'd be fair to say that your world of data that exists out there, risk data, whatever form it exists in, is the world in which you play. And then you harness and grab it depending on the question at large or the project at hand, to grab it and then to wrestle it into some kind of understanding. Is that what you do in a rough sense?
Yeah, I mean that's a fair description. And just to fill in the gap between doing that for Verizon for several years, me and the sort of chief data scientist person, Jay Jacobs, that was working with me at Verizon, we always thought, well, this has been a lot of fun. What if we did this on a larger level and worked with a lot of different data sets and a lot of different companies? What would that look like? And we kind of came up with the concept of Scientia Institute. And we didn't know if we were going to make it back then. If we could just keep doing what we're doing and pay the bills and feed our families, we were happy. So thankfully we're still doing it 8 years later, but that was very much the line of thought of let's keep doing this. I think we're doing some good here. And Scientia Institute, if anyone wants to check out just an example of what you just described there, Jeff, you can go to scientia.com /IRIS, IRIS, the Information Risk Insights Study. We have several of those. And we take, 5 years of 10 years of publicly available incident data, and we analyze that, crunch through, and we're trying to answer questions like, what's the probability of a large financial company having some type of security incident in a year? And when they do, what's the typical cost? What's an extreme cost of an incident? And all the other things that are associated with that for the purposes of managing risk, because we think you can manage risk better when you know all the details.
Well, Wade, the Safe House Initiative freely gives, and you freely give all the time, through the Institute. And it's a great way to help others. You can never give away more than you'll receive. That's kind of the way I look at things.
Indeed. I feel like I'm living proof of that. I've tried to share as much as I can learn, but I end up learning a whole lot more from the people I share it with. So it's a good thing.
Well, so in the 8 years you've been doing this with the Institute, have you seen a shift or an evolution of not only the data available, but the questions being asked, or the insights being requested?
Oh yeah. That's been a lot of fun. And if it's okay, I'll sort of even go back before the Institute. Let's just say when I first started doing this at Verizon for the DBIR, I can very clearly remember when we first published that report. We published a breakdown of the threat actors involved in all of the incidents that we were able. And the first report was a retrospective on like several hundred investigations. And we ended up finding over 90% of incidents were attributed to external threat actors or outsiders, and 5 to 10% insiders. And there were some third party in the mix as well on those. But I remember people just livid about that. And a lot of people responding, this is trash analysis. Everybody knows that insiders are 80% of cyber risk, and very, very, very strongly held opinions about that. And it led to some really interesting conversations. For instance, well, you realize that by saying that 90% of incidents are tied to outsiders, I'm not necessarily saying that 80% of risk isn't insiders, because risk is frequency and losses. I'm just showing the frequency side of the equation. So let's get our terminology straight, right? But even even aside from that, that there was a definite changing of perception. And I think that's weird now because we're so used to APTs and
Yeah.
state affiliated actors and, Russian cybercrime. And most of the things that we're concerned about are in that external category. But back then, we weren't doing all of that kind of stuff, or at least having those conversations at a wide level. So that's one. Patching and vulnerabilities is another one. Over the years, people have this sense that all incidents are some kind of 0-day vulnerability that's exploited by, frighteningly sophisticated analysis. But it's not true. It's most of them are vulnerabilities that have been out there for years, and the patches have been available, and they just weren't deployed. And so the incident happened. And that kind of stuff, I think they're not revolutionary insights, but I think they're critically important for managing real risk in security, because the uber sophisticated Mission Impossible attacks are a lot more fun to think about and worry about. But for most of us, that's not how we're going to get hurt tomorrow on our next data breach.
Now, has it evolved that the insider risk is getting higher, or is it still the external is the highest?
It is still external, and even more dominant in the data that I've looked at more recently. I have never seen a data set, unless it was specifically looking at insider events. I've never seen a data set that where insider incidents were more frequent than externally associated actors, just looking at broad stroke of incidents. Again, I'm not discounting, because we have seen that insider events, they tend to steal more data than outsiders do. And those can be the most costly events. So I'm certainly not poo-pooing the risk, just in terms of frequency. Just think about it. There's way more people that exist outside your organization than you employ inside it. So the numbers are just stacked against it from that perspective.
Yeah, and everything you do is all data driven, and it's all empirical. Are you ever asked for projecting what could happen based upon what has happened?
Yes, we are, and we do that within reason. For instance, one thing that we do quite often is looking back at the history of incidents that have occurred and projecting a probability that your organization will have an incident in a given time frame. That's a prediction, essentially, and it's a prediction based that the future is going to at least semi approximate the past. And so we do a lot of that. We also do some work. Say we helped develop the exploit prediction scoring system, or EPSS. Some people may be familiar with things like CVSS. I forget what the acronym stands for, Common Vulnerability Scoring System or whatever. But it's a way to try to determine, is this vulnerability something you should pay attention to, and does it represent a high risk or not? So all published vulnerabilities get a CVSS score, but CVSS scores are actually pretty terrible predictors of whether or not a vulnerability will be exploited. And so we set out to gather tons of information about vulnerabilities to try to offer a better prediction of what is the likelihood that this vulnerability will be exploited in the next 30 days. And that's what EPSS gives, is a prediction based on a ton of data out there about any vulnerability. And the goal is to help organizations prioritize, because they're just buried under an avalanche of vulnerabilities in their environment, and you can't fix them all. So fix the ones that are going to be attacked.
What is your favorite part of what you do? And has it changed over the 8 years?
My favorite part is a combination of learning something new and sharing it with other people. So I really am motivated by that. I enjoy it. I have a curiosity, high degree of curiosity by nature, and I think that's an excellent trait to have as a researcher. So it motivates me and drives me to keep going. And then once I do learn something that I think is cool, I very much want to share it with other people. So that keeps content and reports coming. So that's my favorite part of what we do. Sometimes the things in the middle aren't nearly as fun. Like trying to get to the point at which I learned something
Yeah.
is often lots of working with our data scientists and turning data over and over again and trying to find, you feel like something's there, not quite coming out. And then once it's there, you're like, yes, that was worth it. So it's not all roses, but those things are really the good part of what we get to do.
Do you ever have do you ever find something that people don't want to hear? And they're like, no, you have a client and they engage you and you come back
Yeah.
and say, okay, here's the data. Don't shoot the messenger kind of thing. Do you ever have that happen?
Yes. Yes. So we work with a lot of security companies, and they will hire us to analyze their data sets.
Yep.
Whatever it is that they collect in their product or service, they hire us, we analyze it, and usually we're working with them to produce some kind of report that for them is thought leadership and
Mhm.
and that kind of thing. So as you might imagine, they want things that are going to grab some headlines, right? So
Yeah,
so
right.
they often have ideas of what they would like their data to say. So we are in a position a lot of times of kind of being the messenger of, okay, I know you wanted something just radically new in here, but
Yeah.
this year looks kind of similar to last year, and we can talk
Yeah.
about some trend changes, but it's not like revolutionary. And
Yeah.
they kind of try to read in, oh well, AI is hot right now, so
Right.
obviously there's something in the data that says AI is amazing, right? And we're like, not really. I mean, it wasn't really collect about that. Um, and some organizations have a sense that they are just a snowflake and no other organization is like they're
Yeah.
unique. And we're kind
Yeah.
of like, well, you're not all that different than what a lot of other organizations are experiencing. I know that's not what you want to hear, but there's actually a good thing about that, because we have all these other lessons that you can take to bear now because you're similar to others with similar issues. So yeah, there's stuff like that.
Well, wait, I tell you, we could do this all day long. I love it. Any kind of general thoughts in kind of a closing concept?
When I look back over the course of my career, in the early days, I felt my job and primary challenge was finding data that was relevant to
Mm,
analyze, to better understand cyber risk and analyze it, model it, et cetera. That was the primary focus of my job and the primary need, because that data did not exist. Today, however, that is no longer my job. I believe that there's plenty of data out
yeah,
there
yeah.
on all kinds of factors that you want to know about on cyber risk. And the primary job is sifting through all of that data and making sense of it so that you can do the assessment that you make, the assessment you need to make, the decision you're trying to do. So that is the challenge. It's still a data challenge, but it's not about does it exist? It's about now it exists. How do I use it and how do I leverage it? And that's how my job has shifted, over kind of the
Yeah.
long-term 2-decade long span, I would say.
Yeah. That's been quite an adventure. And the work you do is fascinating. I'm sure some of it's in the middle, maybe a bit dry and, over and over and over again. But I think the results and the insights that you have, the light shining that you have, it's got to be fantastic and extremely rewarding.
Indeed, I love it.
Indeed. So, our audience always, I always love to leave them with our guests to give them one piece of advice that they could do today to improve their fortunes, if you will, in terms of being more secure or resilient. What would that be? One thing be? Wait.
So this may not be very surprising, but I would say identify the questions that you want answered
Yeah.
and figure out a way to measure whatever you need to measure to answer those questions. And that sounds simplistic, but let me just give an example. It drives me crazy that we are at this point in our industry and we don't have basic measures of effectiveness for common things that we call best practices. We think they're best practices and there's pretty good evidence that they're useful, but I can't think of really anything that we do that if you tell me, okay, an organization does best practice A, well, they should expect approximately an X% reduction in the likelihood of large-scale data breaches or denial of service incidents or outages or disruptions, whatever it is, and between X and Y dollars in reduced loss expectancy.
Yeah.
We're not there, and it just aggravates me that we're not, and I think part of it is because we kind of think it's too hard. But I always tell people, challenge yourselves, and if you're working with service providers and vendors and others, challenge them to start getting these data points together and measure it, because I think we'll all be better off if we can do that.
That's great, and I hadn't even thought about that. That's great insight, Wade. Tell you what, the wait is worth its weight in gold to meet you, Wade, and it's good to have met you face to face, and also have this chance to spend time with you on the Safe House. Really appreciate it.
You too, Jeff. I mean, thanks for bringing me on. Always happy to talk about this stuff, and you guys are doing some good work too. So I hate to hog the microphone all about what we're doing and that kind of thing. So keep up the good work.
That's okay, buddy. Thank you so much, and you're welcome back to join us anytime. And tell you, this is going to help a lot of folks. Appreciate it. That's our podcast for today. I'm Jeff Edwards for the Safe House Initiative. Thanks for joining us, and remember, be safe, be resilient, and be kind to each other. For more information about the Safe House Initiative, please use your mobile device to scan the QR code on the screen, or send us an email at info@safehouseinitiative.org, or visit us on our website, safehouseinitiative.org. We look forward to hearing from you.